Welcome to a new deep dive. There are very few things in this world that can command the absolute, undivided attention of thousands of people, all at exactly the same time.
Oh, definitely. Very few.
Right. Like, think about the last time you were at a major summer celebration. You're sitting on a blanket, the sun goes down, and suddenly you feel that unmistakable booming thump right in your chest.
Yeah, that physical shockwave, you just feel it in your ribs.
Exactly. The sky lights up, and for just a few minutes, everybody around you simply stops. You look up, and it's like fireworks act as a universal sensory shortcut to awe.
I love that phrasing, a sensory shortcut to awe.
Yeah. They take every single stressed out adult in that crowd and instantly turn them right back into a wide-eyed kid.
Because it's a profound psychological reset. I mean, we spend most of our days looking down at our phones at our desks, focused entirely on our immediate earthbound surroundings.
Like completely grounded.
And then, without warning, our gaze is just forced upward by this overwhelming display of light and sound. The sheer scale of the spectacle forces you to be present.
It really does. It completely wipes the slate clean.
Exactly. It strips away whatever you were worrying about 5 minutes ago and leaves you with this pure, visceral sense of wonder.
And that experience is exactly what we're exploring today. Our mission for this deep dive is to trace the explosive, honestly chaotic history and the deeply surprising etymology behind the word fireworks.
Which is a wild ride, by the way.
It really is. We are pulling from a fascinating stack of historical research that shows how a word deeply rooted in 16th century warfare and a technology born from a failed ancient immortality potion somehow morphed into the colorful, joyful displays that define modern celebrations today.
The story of the firework is truly a story of human trial, error, immense danger, and eventually high art.
Yeah.
It's a journey that spans continents and centuries, and it fundamentally changes its purpose at almost every sub along the way.
But before we dive into that ancient history, I think we really need to set the scale. We need to put into perspective what a massive, deeply ingrained cultural phenomenon we are dealing with here.
Oh, the modern scale is just staggering.
It is. According to statistics from the American Pyrotechnics Association, there are over 16,000 community fireworks shows that take place every single July 4th in the United States alone.
16,000. That's hard to even picture.
Right. 16,000 simultaneous choreographed explosions happening across the country. And the reigning champion of them all is the Macy's 4th of July fireworks in New York City.
Yeah, that one is legendary.
It's huge. They aren't just setting off a few rockets from a park. They use over 85,000 individual shells for that one single event.
85,000? I mean, that number represents a staggering logistical achievement.
I can't even imagine the planning.
Well, if you try to imagine choreographing 85,000 separate, highly controlled chemical reactions over a major metropolitan area, you start to realize the level of precision involved.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying, honestly.
It kind of is. These modern shows are run by complex electronic firing systems synchronized to, like, the millisecond.
Wow.
Pyrotechnicians are essentially painting the sky using volatile chemicals. They have to calculate wind speeds, blast radiuses, and precise ignition times.
So it's heavily mathematical.
Completely. It requires an incredible understanding of physics and chemistry to ensure that 85,000 literal bombs go off as art rather than a disaster.
Right. So we have this massive, highly scientific modern scale today, and fireworks are completely synonymous with American independence. You practically cannot picture the 4th of July without picturing explosions in the sky.
Absolutely. It's the defining feature of the holiday.
But going through the historical sources, I found an incredible detail. If you were to travel back in time to the actual founding of the nation, they didn't even call these celebratory displays fireworks.
No, they actually didn't. You have to look at the letters written by the founders themselves. In 1776, John Adams famously wrote a letter detailing his specific vision for how America's independence should be celebrated by future generations.
Right.
He wanted a grand continent-wide spectacle. But he wrote that the day should be commemorated with illuminations from one end of this continent to the other from this time forward forevermore.
Illuminations.
Exactly. Illuminations.
It sounds so regal. So refined. When I hear that word, I picture something out of a Renaissance painting, not, a loud, booming explosion.
Well, that refined tone was very intentional. At the time Adams was writing, an illumination usually meant placing candles in every window of a house or lighting large communal bonfires in town squares to banish the dark.
So it's literal illumination, just making things bright.
Exactly. The emphasis was purely on the light, the brightness, and the symbolic lifting of shadows. Now, the English word fireworks did exist in the 1700s, and it was in the common vocabulary. But those loud, luminous celebratory shows that Adams was anticipating were still broadly categorized under the more elegant banner of illuminations.
Which makes me really wonder about the linguistic pivot here. If illuminations sounds so elegant, and it was the explicit preferred term of a founding father, why did we adopt a completely different word?
That's a great question.
Like, why did fireworks push illuminations out of the spotlight to the point where nobody invites you to a 4th of July illumination today?
To understand how that specific word took over, we really have to pull back from the English language entirely and look at the bizarre origins of the technology itself.
Okay, so where do we start?
The foundation of the word firework begins with a profound accident in ancient China.
Around 200 BCE, right. And what blew my mind in the research is that this wasn't discovered in some sophisticated laboratory.
No, not at all.
People simply noticed that if you toss raw stalks of bamboo into a campfire, it produces a sudden violent explosion.
Yep. The mechanics of that are just fascinating when you break them down.
How does bamboo even explode?
Well, bamboo grows in segments, and between each segment is a hollow pocket of trapped air and sap.
Okay.
When you throw that raw wood into a hot fire, the air and moisture inside those sealed pockets heat up and expand incredibly rapidly.
Oh, so it becomes like a pressure vessel.
Exactly. The pressure builds against the rigid outer walls of the bamboo until the wood simply cannot contain it anymore, and it ruptures with a massive, deafening crack.
I love the linguistic footprint that this specific discovery left behind.
Yeah.
Even today, thousands of years later, the Mandarin Chinese word for firecracker is baozu,
Right.
which translates literally to exploding bamboo. The modern language still preserves the memory of someone accidentally throwing the wrong log onto a fire in 200 BCE.
The language preserves the memory beautifully, but exploding wood is really just a physical reaction.
Right, it's not a chemical firework yet.
Exactly. To get to chemical fireworks, the kind that would eventually inspire the English word we use today, you have to fast forward about 1,000 years.
Okay, so around 800 AD.
Yes. This brings us to the era of the Chinese Taoist alchemists.
The alchemists.
These were early scientists, philosophers, and mystics who were systematically experimenting with various minerals and plant compounds. They began mixing potassium nitrate, which is often called saltpeter, with charcoal and sulfur.
And their motivation is honestly the wildest part of the whole timeline to me. They weren't trying to invent a weapon.
Why not at all?
And they certainly weren't trying to invent a form of entertainment. They were genuinely trying to brew a medicinal elixir for human immortality.
They were meticulously searching for the secret to eternal life.
Wow.
And from an alchemical standpoint, their ingredient choices made a certain kind of logical sense.
How so? Like, why those 3 specific ingredients?
Well, saltpeter was already being used in traditional medicine and cooking. It dissolved strangely in water and produced a cooling sensation, which gave it an aura of mystical potency.
Okay, I can see that.
Then sulfur is highly flammable and was associated with transformation, and charcoal was a reliable, pure fuel source. They hypothesized that combining these potent elements might yield a substance that could preserve the human body forever.
This is the ultimate historical irony.
Yeah.
It is literally like trying to brew a cup of tea for eternal life and accidentally inventing the most destructive powder in human history.
It really is. It's arguably the most consequential miscalculation in the history of science.
I mean, definitely. So what happened when they tested it?
Well, when they exposed that specific mixture to heat, they realized very quickly they hadn't found the key to immortality. They had synthesized gunpowder.
Oops.
Yeah, a massive oops. The saltpeter acted as an oxidizer, providing extra oxygen to the fire, while the sulfur and charcoal acted as the fuel, creating an incredibly rapid, violent combustion.
So they've got this violent powder. What do they actually do with it?
They soon took this new powder and combined it with their ancient tradition. By packing this gunpowder into hollowed-out bamboo shoots or tight paper tubes and lighting them, they created a much more powerful, intentional explosion.
I want you, the listener, to really picture this scene in 800 AD. Because when we talk about early fireworks, it is so easy to imagine a modern Disney World display bursting over an ancient palace.
Right, but it wasn't like that at all.
Not even close. The historical sources draw a very sharp line here. These early fireworks were strictly earthbound. Nobody was shooting them up into the clouds.
No aerial shells yet.
And even more surprisingly, they were completely colorless.
Yeah, there were no vibrant colors at all. No shimmering golden willows or bright red spheres.
Just fire and smoke.
Exactly. The visual effect was essentially a sudden, aggressive flash of bright white or yellowish flame, accompanied by a thick cloud of noxious smoke and a tremendous concussive boom. They were essentially primitive flashbangs.
Which means they weren't being used to put on a gorgeous aesthetic show. I read that these early, colorless explosions were basically acting as spiritual burglar alarms.
That's a great way to put it. The primary function was deeply ritualistic. In traditional Chinese culture at the time, loud noises and sudden bursts of light were believed to be effective at frightening away malevolent spirits and demons.
Like the Neon monster, right?
Specifically figures like the mythical Neon monster. You would set these off during New Year celebrations or weddings, not for the beauty of the light, but for the sheer violence of the noise.
Wow.
It was a spiritual technology designed to cleanse an area of bad luck and protect the people gathered there.
Okay, so how do we get from a spiritual alarm system in ancient China to the aggressive-sounding English word fireworks? Because illuminations sounds like it describes banishing the dark, but fireworks sounds distinctly industrial.
It does. And the shift in language is directly tied to a shift in the technology's application. The technology had to travel out of China, and its core purpose had to pivot from spirituality to violence.
Okay, warfare.
By the year 1200, the Chinese military had fully recognized the immense destructive potential of this powder. They stopped just packing it into small paper tubes and started packing it into iron cannons to shoot heavy projectiles at enemy forces.
Right. Gunpowder was fully weaponized. The elixir of life literally becomes a tool of siege warfare.
Exactly. And as global trade routes expanded, particularly the Silk Road, these weaponized gunpowder technologies made their way into the Middle East and eventually Europe.
So it heads west.
Yes. When gunpowder arrived in the Western world, it was heavily adopted for military sieges. And it's here, in the 1500s, that we finally see the official origin of the English word fireworks, according to Merriam-Webster.
And it was absolutely not a festive term. It was a strictly military classification.
Totally strictly military.
Let's look at the etymology for a second. It's a compound of fire and works. But in the 16th century, the word works was commonly used to mean deeds or actions.
Right.
So a firework was, quite literally, a deed of fire.
You really have to imagine the sheer terror of medieval warfare to understand that phrase. A deed of fire wasn't, a sparkler.
Right.
It described the active, catastrophic, intentional use of flaming projectiles, primitive grenades, and explosives used to blow gaping holes in stone castle walls.
Terrifying stuff.
These were horrific, violent events. The word carried the immense weight of destruction.
It's honestly incredible that a word literally translating to deeds of fire, a term born entirely out of warfare and weaponry, was somehow rebranded into a word that you and your family associate almost exclusively with joy and summer celebrations.
It's quite the leap.
It's a massive psychological leap, from a siege weapon to a neighborhood block party.
It is one of the most dramatic semantic shifts in the English language. What happened was that by 1575, European royalty realized that the same awe-inspiring power that breached walls could be used to entertain.
So they just decided to make it a show.
Basically. They started paying military engineers to take these military-grade explosives, these deeds of fire, and light them in the air during peacetime to celebrate military victories, royal weddings, or coronations.
The original pyrotechnicians were literally military engineers.
Exactly. And the sheer sensory overload of the spectacle was so overwhelming that the practice developed its own cultural momentum. The public absolutely loved it.
They couldn't look away.
Right. And as this celebratory use grew, the general public started using the word fireworks to describe the show rather than the weapon.
Okay, so by the time John Adams is talking about illuminations in 1776, fireworks is already in the dictionary.
Yes.
But it's clearly still carrying a bit of that aggressive, brute force baggage from the military.
Yeah.
It makes sense why a statesman trying to establish a refined, permanent national holiday would prefer the prettier word.
Oh, definitely. He wanted something that sounded elevated.
But even as the word firework evolved to mean a celebratory display by the 1600s, the reality of attending one of these shows was nothing like sitting on a picnic blanket today.
No, not all.
These rebranded deeds of fire were still wildly dangerous.
The safety standards of the 17th century were virtually non-existent.
I mean, they didn't even have OSHA back then.
No, definitely no OSHA. You have a society increasingly hungry for grand entertainment, but they are dealing with a highly volatile, unpredictable chemical technology.
Right.
There were no electronic ignition switches, no blast shields, and certainly no safety perimeters keeping the audience hundreds of yards away.
Instead of a safety perimeter, they had guys in leaf suits.
The green men, yes.
This is genuinely one of the most astonishing details I found in all of the source material.
It's so strange.
The aerial shows in the 1600s were run by a firemaster who engineered the explosives and his assistant who was out in the open with the crowd. And this assistant was known officially as the Green Man.
Right. The role of the Green Man was a bizarre hybrid of crowd control, theatrical entertainment, and extreme physical peril.
According to the sources, the Green Man would literally wear a suit made entirely of fresh green leaves. He would stand at the front of the crowd, mere feet from the explosives, and tell jokes to warm up the audience while the firemaster was getting the fuses ready.
Yes, a literal leaf suit.
The Green Man is essentially a tragic stand-up comedian acting as the opening act for a wildly unstable explosive device.
The visual is just staggering. The use of leaves was partly a theatrical nod to the mythological wild man of the woods figure in European folklore.
Okay.
But it was also a severely misguided attempt at protection. They actually believed fresh, damp leaves might provide a layer of shielding against errant sparks.
Spoiler alert, they didn't.
No, they didn't. In reality, you have a man wearing foliage, standing next to open flames and volatile black powder, trying to get a laugh before the sky explodes.
That is so dark.
And the historical record is grim on this point. Many green men were killed or horrifically injured in malfunctions. Shell casings would fracture, fuses would burn too quickly, or sparks would catch the crowd. It was a genuine life-or-death performance art.
It forces you to think about the mindset of the audience in the 1600s. They're coming to see this terrifying display of raw power, and part of the thrill is clearly the danger.
Oh, the danger was the point.
Right. They're watching this leaf-covered jester standing right in the blast zone. It really underscores how untamed fireworks were. But despite the danger, the cultural impact of the spectacle was undeniable.
Absolutely undeniable.
During the 1600s, the word fireworks actually took on a secondary, figurative meaning. People started using it to describe anything spectacular, majestic, or emotionally volatile.
A heated argument, a dramatic event.
Right, exactly. A great piece of art. They were all described as fireworks.
The spectacle had deeply penetrated the cultural psyche. It became the ultimate metaphor for anything that violently demands your attention. But it is crucial to remember that even during this era of the firemaster and the tragic green man, these majestic displays were still lacking the one thing we consider most essential today.
The color.
They were still completely colorless.
Still just white flashes and gold sparks. A sky full of literal fire, but no artful palette.
Right. It actually took until the 1830s, hundreds of years after they started shooting gunpowder into the sky, for a major chemical breakthrough to occur.
Wow, the 1830s. That's relatively recent in the grand scheme of things.
It really is. Italian pyrotechnicians began adding a compound called potassium chlorate to the explosive mixtures.
Okay, potassium chlorate. What did that do?
Well, potassium chlorate burns at an incredibly high temperature, and that intense heat was the missing key because it allowed other metallic salts added to the mix to be properly ignited.
So it's not the explosive itself making the color, it's the intense heat reacting with specific metals.
Exactly. And how it works on a molecular level is just brilliant.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so the potassium chlorate provides a massive surge of thermal energy. That heat excites the electrons in the metallic salts.
Excited electrons?
Right. When electrons get excited, they essentially jump up to a higher energy level. But they can't stay there forever.
They have to come back down.
Exactly. When they fall back down to their normal state, they release that extra energy in the form of a photon, a particle of light.
Oh, wow.
And different metals release photons at different wavelengths, which our eyes perceive as different colors.
That is so cool. So what metals make what colors?
If you add strontium to the mix, those falling electrons emit red light. Barium emits green light. Copper compounds emit blue light.
Copper is blue.
Yep. That chemical reaction in the 19th century is the exact moment the firework finally became the signature, deeply colorful art form we know today.
The journey from earthbound bamboo popping in a campfire, to military deeds of fire tearing down castle walls, to the tragic green men risking their lives in leaf suits, to the 19th century discovery of dancing electrons creating color.
It's an unbelievable evolution.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the modern sky. Now that history and chemistry have given us these precise, vibrantly colored airborne explosions, pyrotechnicians have developed a highly specific vocabulary to classify the marvels you see today.
They have. While fireworks remains the general term for the entire show, anyone who designs these displays relies on a strict taxonomy.
Right.
Individual fireworks have highly specific names based on the physical behavior and the shape of the explosion.
This is the anatomy of a spectacle. Our sources define 4 distinct terms that you will see in almost every major show, and I want to run through them so you know exactly what you are looking at next July. First up, we have peonies.
Peonies. They are the absolute foundation of modern pyrotechnics. When you close your eyes and picture a standard firework, you are almost certainly picturing a peony.
Just a big, colorful sphere.
Exactly. They are engineered to break symmetrically, creating a perfect spherical burst of colorful sparks that expand outward in a clean globe. They don't leave a trail of smoke as they expand. It's just a pure, sharp sphere of color.
Okay, next we have crossettes.
Crossettes are far more complex mechanically.
How so?
They start out looking like a standard peony bursting outward, but inside each of those individual stars flying through the air is a secondary delayed charge.
Oh, so they explode again.
Right. Just as the star reaches its peak outward distance, that secondary charge ignites, causing the star to break apart into even smaller fragments, usually splitting into a cross shape.
Oh, crossette, cross. That makes sense.
It creates a chaotic, crisscrossing web effect in the sky. It plays with the audience's expectations by delivering a second surprise explosion just when you think the visual is fading.
I love those. Then there are horsetails.
The horsetail is designed for elegance rather than aggression.
Okay.
Instead of a hard, symmetrical, spherical burst, the shell is packed to break very softly at its apex.
So it doesn't just blast everywhere.
Exactly. The glowing sparks just spill out of the casing and fall slowly downward, lingering in the air for an extended period.
Like a willow tree.
Yes, it looks exactly like a glowing tail of light, or the drooping branches of a weeping willow tree, gently cascading from the sky toward the ground.
That is gorgeous.
So,
And finally, a term we all know intimately, but maybe didn't realize, was an official, recognized pyrotechnic classification, the dud.
the dud. It is the universal industry term for a firework that simply fails to go off.
Even with all the modern tech.
Even with all of it, despite our centuries of chemical advancements and computer modeling, physics sometimes refuses to cooperate.
What causes it?
A fuse burns out, moisture compromises the black powder, or the lift charge fails, and the ancient deed of fire just remains completely undone.
Here's my challenge to you. Picture your absolute favorite summer celebration, the one you look forward to all year. The next time you are sitting on that blanket staring up at the sky, I challenge you to try actively spotting the difference.
It's a great exercise.
Don't just let the noise wash over you. Point them out. Say, hey, there's a peony. Look at that one breaking apart into a crossette. Watch that horsetail falling.
It adds a completely new layer of appreciation when you can decode the sky and recognize the specific architecture of the explosion.
It fundamentally changes your relationship to the event. It transforms you from a passive observer being startled by loud noises into someone who is reading the intentional historical artistry of the firemaster.
Absolutely.
Let's zoom out and look at the incredible historical arc we just walked through today.
It's been a long one.
We started in ancient China with an elixir of immortality that failed to grant eternal life, but accidentally gave the world its most powerful explosive.
Right.
We watched that powder become a terrifying weapon of siege warfare, giving birth to a harsh English word meaning deeds of fire.
Yeah.
We saw that weapon transition into a deadly, chaotic comedy routine involving men covered in leaves trying not to catch fire.
The poor, green men.
Seriously. And finally, through the wonders of 19th century chemistry and excited electrons, it blossomed into the dazzling peonies and crossettes that you watch explode every summer. It is a perfect reminder of how many wild, unpredictable layers of history and human ambition are hidden inside the everyday words we use.
The word fireworks truly carries the DNA of ancient alchemists, medieval artillerymen, and modern chemists, all wrapped up into a single concept that we now associate almost entirely with communal joy.
Which leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've seen how the firework evolved all the way from colorless, popping bamboo into chemically colored, highly choreographed aerial art.
Yeah, the technology completely transformed.
But the word adapted to survive.
Right.
So what happens to the word in the future? We are already seeing modern cities experiment with replacing gunpowder entirely.
We are?
We're seeing massive, silent drone swarms lighting up the sky in synchronized patterns. We're seeing giant laser holograms projected over city skylines.
It's the next evolution.
If those pristine, silent technologies eventually replace the messy, explosive traditions of the past, will we still call these light shows fireworks when there is no longer any actual fire doing the work?
That is a great point.
Will that visceral, sensory shortcut to awe survive the end of the explosion itself? Think about that the next time you feel that boom in your chest.
A fascinating question to leave them with.
Thanks for diving in with us today. Keep looking up.